somewhere down there. Right? So it just doesn't add up. So you have to work yourself far harder, far stronger. Come to the point that say, okay, look at me, I have delivered, guys. Please, I've worked hard enough. I deserve this. I mean, one of my very old bosses, like I remember at a time, he said, oh, I know you've been doing very well, but you're a woman, you're a single girl who stays with a mom. That guy's got 2 daughters. Let me give him better increment. And on my face. And that time, I mean, I'm talking about like about 10, 15 years ago, HR practices were not so developed. You were not so aware. So in today's day and age, I would have taken him to task in front of the HR team and said that, what's happening. But at that point in time, you were not aware. You were like, okay, maybe there's, I shouldn't ask for something, So things happen, and it's just conditioning. I think we've just kind of gotten into that.
Do you have a perspective in that?
I think the narrative's changed a little bit. The conversations that we've driven are far more significant. And then there is a filter down effect that happens, right? So as much as it's a glass ceiling, it's also a class ceiling. Like, that's wordplay, I love it. But that's essentially what it is, right? So when you have, and we were talking about this earlier, on folk media, for instance, you have an equitable split of genders. And possibly different kinds of backgrounds, whether it's education, whether it's different parts of the country. My team in Bacardi, if you look at marketing, 75% women. But the moment you go into sales, and the moment you go into the smaller towns of sales, that thing gets skewed. And one of the things that we can do as a concentrated effort, apart from platforms, initiatives, having conversations like this, is also to make sure that at the very entry level, when we're recruiting, at the very base level for sales, we make sure that that's equitable. Rather than saying, I'm going to have a mandated percentage of women that have to be at the top level, it needs to start from the bottom. And honestly, like you said, it's about not just raising your women to be smarter, more assertive, but to raise your men to be more sensitive, right? To be more empathetic. And that's where I feel like the challenge is not just a female problem. It's a humanity problem. And as long as you agree and you want to be respectful to humans and their points of view, you'll pretty much learn something from it.
That's an interesting point you make there about, how to kind of raise our men in the society, because there is a very clear discrimination when you have male ambition versus female ambition. And success clearly does not come without ambition. Now, we've seen that male ambition typically gets celebrated with much fanfare. You're referred to as the alpha male.
We were just talking about
Yeah, I'm sure. I was actually kind of quietly listening to your conversation there, and I picked it up.
Way to go, getting your notes right.
No, but genuinely, I've seen this. I mean, my wife is also a founder of a content startup, and I've seen this where I won't lie that I had a slight issue dealing with it when she began. And I started thinking to myself, saying that, am I being a chauvinist here? Because it's so deeply rooted into our psyche, right? And it's true, and I won't deny it. I have no qualms in denying it, that it's very deeply rooted in the Indian psyche, Indian male psyche, where the man is referred to as the alpha male, right? You're spoken of as the aggressive guy, the smart guy, the hot, sexy guy who's really ambitious. The moment the female ambition is laid out on the table, the prefixes become negative. They're nasty, insulting at some point. So does that deter women from putting out their ambition or laying out the ambition on the table in a very bare fashion, just as a man would do it? Because you may fear being judged for that, judged at home, judged at work, because that is really what kind of happens at our workplaces.
Yeah, I think over here I'd like to take on Sunny's narrative and the point that she's been trying to make over here. I don't think there is any option but to be able to put yourself out there and to be able to say that I am able to do this better than anyone else. There is no better way to do it than to be able to get comfortable with self-promotion. Men are very, very comfortable with that. Besides, men are raised to believe that there is nothing that you can't do. There's nothing you can't achieve. There's no field, that you can't make a mark in. But women are I don't know whether we're taught to be. I wasn't taught to be. But why do women naturally have a tendency to have a lot of self-doubt? Women generally tend to be It's not just accommodating. Also, I mean, I look at myself. I always approach everything with, I think I need to learn some more. I'm not so sure if I know it absolutely well. I might actually be the most capable person in the room, and I'm still questioning and asking, maybe I need to find out about this as well. Maybe I need to learn some more. It's just, I think that's also what actually makes women better leaders. It's also what makes women better empathetic people managers. But that is not seen like that. You know, it's seen as maybe she's actually not as capable. So there is no shortcut to this, but to be able to train ourselves and train girls to be able to self-promote, to be able to say, I'm good at this, please look at me, this is my work. Exactly as Sunny was saying it. You just have to be more unabashed about it.
But Vani, sorry.
Or we all need a shot of testosterone.
Sorry?
Or we all need a shot of testosterone.
But just interjecting here for a moment. You know what I really want to understand is, does it deter you today at your workplaces from laying out the ambition, from being the ambitious person that you may be, because that's your personality? Does it stop you from being that person? Because I've seen workplaces, and these are modern day workplaces, media entities, where women are judged for their ambition. You know, you're called names, you're called things that are not very pleasant. And that's really what I'm trying to get to. Does it stop you from putting out the ambition? And probably you're kind of keeping it slightly, you're playing it down, and you're keeping it to yourself, unlike, the male boss or the manager who would unabashedly put it out on the table and kind of talk about wanting to kind of be the CEO in the next 3 to 5 years. You don't tend to see too many women talking with that level of aggression. And that's what I'm trying to get to.
You haven't been to my office. My employees don't
I think
like
they'll be very
when
happy
I
to
give
come,
it to
Sunny.
them.
I can promise you that. They'll be very happy to come to your office.
Bhavna was talking about this earlier. One can't not be one's true self. You have to be your own true self. And you have to be able to enjoy doing what you're doing. So if surviving at office is an everyday, every moment struggle, where every moment I'm proving to everyone I'm good at this, then at some point in time, for everything that we've said, including taking on the responsibility of being role models, etc., one says, I really don't need this shit. I can do better than this. So it's a question of making sure that we as people are happy. And I think in doing that also, we're being role models to everyone out there. Not just men, not just women, but also men. Because like I said, I think it's important to show others that I have the wisdom and the bravado and the courage inside me to do what makes me happy.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I feel as long as you're passionate about what you're doing, and at the end of it, you're proud. Like there's a sense of pride about the work that you do. And I think all of us have that. The name calling and the backstabbing and all of that is just like war wounds, like it sort of falls in the wayside, because eventually if you're your true authentic self and you're proud of what you do, you give it your 100%, enough people will know it. And the moment you move from saying I want external validation where everybody else needs to be happy with me and I start pleasing them, that's when you start becoming the sort of person that everybody wants you to be, but you're not necessarily who you are. So it's so important to sort of be centered and know what drives you. And eventually, if you're doing enough of the right things, people will notice.
And Ashita, just to add to that, if you actually look for too much external validation, it falls flat, because people start seeing you as a doubting Thomas, saying that, oh my God, this woman is not confident about herself because she needs 10 people to say that she's on the right track. So just your confidence, just your own personality and the way you conduct yourself, that should come out, and just be authentic and true to yourself. And I think things follow. The things will come to your side if you realize that maybe I don't want to be the aggressive person who wants to put out an ambition saying that I want to be the CEO in 3 to 5 years. There are times when you just say, okay, I might want to be the CEO in 3 to 5 years, but maybe this is not the place which will value me. Yes. And there is something else which I know I'll be able to do far happier and far more genuine to my own self than what I'm doing right now. And that's the decision sometimes.
No,
you
I,
just have
I
to
completely
take.
agree, and I think that is not only true for women, that's true for everyone. I
So
mean,
here's my problem with millennials, is that no one wants to work anymore. No one wants to put in the time. No one wants to learn their craft. No one wants to, 4 years for school, who wants to do that? Who wants to start at the bottom when they could call mommy and daddy and be here the next day, but not know jack shit?
Insta
So
fame.
this is my biggest issue with what happens in the workforce or anywhere that I've been, is no one wants to put in the time. And I'm sorry, here's the deal. You have to put in your time. You have to know your craft or your trade. You have to know what you're talking about. You have to stay up all night long, whether you're a man or a woman, and you have to do that. There is no time for rest when you want to get somewhere in business, and that's just what it is. So whether you're a man or a woman, you have to face the walls, you have to face the ceilings, you have to face all that no matter what. If someone in my office doesn't know what they're talking about, trust me, they hear it from me. And they don't like it, and there's nothing I can do about it. Am I sensitive? Absolutely not. And I don't know, that's just who I am. There's it's a small percentage of sensitivity, right guys? Yeah, a little bit. So there's a little bit, and the same thing goes with Daniel.
that was the Indian nod, by the way.
Yeah, it's good.
Which is a
it's
yes
a
and
half
a
and
no.
half. That's fine, I'll take it. But there is no room for any of that. If you don't know what you're doing at the end of the day, and you mess up or you make a mistake that I know that you're better than what you've done, then you're going to hear it. And that's just what it is. And that, I think, is in any business. And I think that if you're a woman in the office and you know you're doing a good job and you know you're putting in your time and you know that you're good at what you're doing, any good businessman is going, or woman, if your boss is a woman or it's a man, but we're talking about men being the boss, he's going to see that. He's going to see who you are eventually. Maybe it takes a little bit longer than it does the person next to you, who is a man, who just seems to be flying his way right to the top. Well, great, good for him. But it might be a slower climb up that ladder. But I do believe any good business person is going to see through the bullshit, is going to see what I call like cutting the fat in business. We cut out the extra fat and we find what is good for us. That's what I believe. I don't sit in an office, unfortunately, so I don't know or feel the things that some women do. I just know what goes on in my office, and I know how I handle business. And I am not so sensitive.
Sunny,
Some of the other
it
people
does
are.
feel like the kind of environment that you have at your office and the kind of setup that it is far more open, forthright, sort of completely transparent, saying, I don't agree with what you said there. But in a lot of other larger setups, there are so many other politics and dynamics at play, and to navigate them, it does take a lot of energy. But eventually, you kind of know the ways of the game, and you know how to get things done. And I think it's complete credit to you that if you have such an open door policy, and a lot of companies will on day zero of recruitment be like, yeah, you walk into the MD's office anytime, and then when you try and get in there for a conversation about your career, you kind of hit the ceiling, right? So I think that's where women do need to know what they're worth, like you said, be far more assertive and put the time in, because entitlement will only get you so far, right? So whether you are a man or a woman, whether you had contacts and you got through, or you sort of just found your way through and it's a smooth sailing thing, eventually you will have to put that time in and be able to do it, whether there are politics at play or not. And if you feel you don't belong, then you just start something of your own like you did.
Ashla, taking on from what you said, so we can safely conclude and assume that there is definitely a glass ceiling at work for women, right? Now, let's say you're experiencing it and you're clearly witnessing it. What is the recourse? What do you do? I mean, do you really give in and move on? Or do you stay along and fight the battle? And for how long? Because from what I hear, and I completely agree with that, it's an extremely exhausting battle. These are, deep-rooted psyches that you're fighting. It's a DNA shift that you're talking about. It's a pivotal shift. So for the younger lot that's kind of watching this and that's kind of, hearing you guys talk, what is that you guys would have done in similar kind of situations?
So I genuinely believe in, firstly, making sure that you've got the A team with you. Like, make sure that at your workplace, whether it's a sisterhood or it's a sister and brotherhood, it doesn't matter, but find your tribe. People that you connect with, people who value you and you value them. And eventually, when there are days that you have a terrible time, there will be someone to go back to, and they become sounding boards for what should I do now. And that sort of starts to happen, and that's why when you spend 10 hours at a workplace, you eventually develop those friendships, and those bonds sort of strengthen you and give you perspective as well. Sometimes you'll come back and say, you know what, my boss really messed up, and I'm really angry about it. But they come back and they could say something like, no, you were wrong at this, right? So you need somebody to give you that perspective. It doesn't matter if it's someone senior, someone junior, your own team, colleagues, wherever. But I feel like that's critical to sort of give you that perspective. It could be a parent for all you know, but you definitely need somebody there to navigate. And if you feel passionately and you feel like you're doing the right thing, you will fight for it. And it's not that much of a challenge when you sort of become stronger with it. And if you genuinely feel like I'm worth so much better and I'm never going to get my way through here, you'll go ahead and you'll do your own thing. Eventually, you'll be okay as long as you know what you're worth and you're willing to sort of invest in time and learn things. So yeah, I mean, that would be my sort of 2 cents. If you feel like there's a serious problem, then definitely report it. Speak out. Because you could be setting an example for somebody else who's probably shy to speak out, sees you there and says, you know what, this has happened to me as well. So you have to draw that line.
Right.
I just want to add to the last bit that she said, which was, there is no choice but to speak up about it. And it's not just about speak out about the big things, but speak out about the everyday small things. Whatever it is, I think the fact that there are few women, there is no running away from the fact that we do bear the burden of making sure that we are changing things or setting a tide which could bring a larger change in the future. Because we have to think about our children, we have to think about how work will be done henceforth. But there is no other way than to be able to speak about it, even if it is tough to talk about it, even if there might be tears shed sometimes, or it may come at the risk of the next promotion, or it may come at the risk of being called the B word, whatever it be.
Oh, I love that. You call me a bitch any day. What I learned was it's okay to be a bitch.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
It's okay.
You
I
take
mean,
pride in being the
within
bitch.
your limits, of course, you shouldn't just be nasty,
Yes.
but it's okay to put your foot down and be a bitch.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. And say, I am the bitch, yeah, now deal with me, exactly. Yeah, so I think there is no other way but to talk about it.
And I think just to add to what these girls have said, it's very important for us to also develop the right talent. So we don't really understand it, but there are a lot of women at the junior levels who are actually looking up to us.
Sure,
right?
absolutely.
And so what you do, how you conduct yourself, all the subtle hints you're giving out is something which you don't realize, but that's what's happening. So if they see you down and out after a meeting, and then they see you, okay, buckle up and say, okay, I'm going to get my groove back. They know that, this is how things need to be handled, and it's really how this woman is doing it, and this is how she's done it for the last 20 years or whatever, and this is how it works. So that, and then secondly, picking up people in your team, outside the team, to just have informal conversations, just kind of mentoring conversations with them, saying that, I saw you do this, I think that was good, keep up to it, stick your grounds, because that's the way we are actually making sure that there are going to be more like us as we go forward, right?
Right.
Like there are obviously lesser percentage gaps now versus maybe 20 years ago, maybe versus 40 years ago. So maybe the next 20 years, that these are the people who've just entered the career, and these are the women you need to take care of, and just be that kind of a mother hen at times.
Yeah,
But just make
absolutely.
sure that they are protected and they know that they are doing right.
Right. No, that's very interesting. I truly believe that no conversation on gender discrimination would be complete without kind of dealing with the elephant in the room, which is pregnancy. And it's funny because you see this pretty much daily at corporates, where the perception that they try and put out is they're very friendly. We celebrate pregnancy. We're going to support you completely. But what follows behind closed doors is hushed conversations. What follows behind closed doors is jokes about pregnancy, about the fact that there's going to be vacuum at work, about the fact that she's never going to be the same. Is that really true? Because I've seen this in media setups. I've seen this in very, very large media setups. And is that very limiting? And how do you kind of bring about a change to that kind of perception? And Sunny, this is very true for the movie industry as well, because we've seen this extremely prevalent in the movie industry, where you've had the yesteryear actresses who've become absolutely redundant after having a child. Now, the question that arises is, was it lack of evolution at the producer's end or the audience's end? And I would like to believe that it's the former. It's not the audience which is less accepting, it's the producer who's less accepting. And that is what kind of, in some sense, I mean, if I can say it, drives, it kind of gets my goal, because I'm like, how does that change what you feel or how passionately you feel about your work? I've seen mothers to kind of become even more task-oriented, to become even more efficient, because they're multitasking at all points. But do you see that? Do you see that dynamic play out in the corporate world? Because I see it all the time. And do you see that dynamic play out in the movie industry as well?
Well, I think in the entertainment industry, I think everybody here can agree with me, is we are seeing a shift in this idea of having children and being able to work. Kareena Kapoor is a perfect example of that, where she is unstoppable. She's so amazing, and she works so hard, and she's still going at it. She's got herself back in shape to what she wants, and still has that drive and determination to keep working, which I think is absolutely amazing, and we should applaud her for that. And not taking those stereotypes and, kind of going to the wayside. I'm so happy she didn't do that. I am a different case and matter, because I just don't care what people think, and I'm not, I wasn't born and raised here. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. What I'm saying is that my whole system and makeup and how I think is completely different. For me, I chose surrogacy and I chose adoption because I wanted to keep going and I wanted to keep working, and that was my own personal choice. I thought I was gonna have one, I had three. That I wasn't planning on, but it's God's plan. Not my plan, that's God's plan. But I wouldn't change anything. My life is crazy, and my children were very upset that I was leaving the house today, and it broke my heart, but I wanted to be here. And I want to do this just as much as I want to see them. And I believe that I'm a better mother if I'm working and providing for my children than if I'm a stay-at-home mother. I'm not saying that being a stay-at-home mother is wrong. I'm saying God bless you for being the stay-at-home mother. But I feel that I'm a better person, I'm a better mother, I'm a better human being working than not working. And I think that my children will thank me one day for working.
Completely, absolutely.
In the corporate world, while, like you said, all the